Hi, welcome back. I'm Dr. James Patterson. This is the fourth video lesson in a series on academic writing, specifically research papers for your junior and senior years at the university. In this particular lesson, I want to talk about taking effective research notes. There are three basic ways of taking notes from sources that you have found and putting them into your paper. They are quoting, summarizing, and paraphrasing, and those are the three that I want to talk about in this short video. But let me begin before the beginning. Effective note-taking begins before the research begins. You are going to be taking information from published sources and you're going to be incorporating it into your own writing. So, have a notepad handy, have different colored pens, or if you like a little bit more color on your notes, get markers, highlighters of different colors so you can keep track of what information, what words are yours and what words are somebody else's. All right? Let me start with a sample of quoting. I want to show you a technique or two techniques to help you keep clear what is being said by whom. All right? So let me put you into a screencast and show you what I'm dealing with here. This is a paper written in MLA format on cognitive development in early childhood education. And the student is beginning a paragraph here. Children are processing, storing, and using information as they grow. And the student wants to include a quote here from a website. So we'll leave that there, and I've put my cursor where I want it. Now, the student has actually found an article entitled Early Childhood Cognitive Development, an Introduction, written by Angela Oswald and posted online 16 January 2008. It's posted at the website mentalhelp.net. And the student wants to pull this first sentence and add it to her paragraph. All right? So here's what I want you to do. If you've got Windows, move your quote, the passage that you want to quote, to the top of your screen. Go to your Windows and activate your Windows. See how that works? So now I've got young children are not only growing physically on the website, I also have my document open. Now I'm quoting directly from Oswald. So I start with a quotation mark. Remember, quotation marks identify quoted words. Without the quotation marks, you are saying those are your words, and we're not. We're starting to put in Angela Oswald's words in this paper, and then begin typing. Young children are not only growing physically during early childhood, comma, but they are also growing mentally. And I want the next sentence. Children of this age continue to advance their skills in observing and interacting with the world around them. Now that's the end of my quoted passage. So I put another quotation mark, and then since I'm working in MLA's file, I'm going to put Oswald's name here. Oswald. And this is an electronic source, so I don't need to give a number, period. And then the student wants to include that as part of her paragraph. So the student has a paragraph that begins with her topic sentence. Children are processing, storing, and using information as they grow. Then the student wants to include this quote from Angela Oswald. Young children are not only growing physically during early childhood, comma, but they are also growing mentally, period. Children of this age continue to advance their skills in observing and interacting with the world around them. End of the quotation. I put in my citation. Now this is not the first time that the student has referenced Oswald's material in this paper, and so just using the parenthetical citation right here is perfectly legitimate at this point. If this were the first quote that the student was going to be giving us from Angela Oswald, I would want a signal phrase at the beginning that would say, according to Angela Oswald, and that would give me the full name. But since this is a second or third time that the student is taking information from this article, the parenthetical author's name is sufficient. Now, I had to make sure that I typed it exactly the way it appeared on text. That is my recommendation to you. That way you can remember to put in your quotation marks. But let's say you're one of those students who likes shortcuts. You like to go to your text, you like to block copy your text, control copy, you like to open your document, and then you like to paste. Now, I want you to see a couple of things here. I have the quote exactly as the way it appears on the web page, but please notice, even though I've quoted these words, I do not have the quotation marks. So while you are here right now, since this is what you're going to do, is change the color. Now, I have quoted words in my paper. The student has quoted words in her paper, but it's a different font and it's a different color. That's fine, except now what's still missing? The name of the author. And so again, put in your quotation marks. And give the name of the author. This is MLA. And as long as you're here, you might as well then go ahead and put everything back to black font and make sure you're doing everything in Times New Roman 12-point font size. So this is quoting material. You need to make sure that your quoted material is enclosed in quotation marks, and you need to make sure it appears exactly the way it does in the published source. You need to use quotation marks, and you need to include a reference. Now here in the page is just Oswalt. In a later video I'll talk about documenting this entire website on the bibliography page. Alright, let me take you out of the screencast and back to view. This has just been an example of how to quote material into your papers. It was a short passage and it was easily to put into the paragraph that the student wanted to embellish her own ideas with the ideas of the published author, a master's in social work. Recognize, though, that sometimes what you want to include is a very large section, and so that large section is going to be a huge quote in your paper, and you don't need everything that's in that section, you just need pieces. In which case, you move on to the other two elements for taking effective notes. You can summarize or you can paraphrase. Let me start by talking about summarizing, but let me start by comparing summarizing with paraphrasing. Summaries and paraphrases are both written in your own words. Let me say that again. We're not using Angela Oswalt's words anymore. We're going to summarize or we're going to paraphrase Angela Oswalt. We're going to use our own words. Now we still need to credit Oswalt as the source of those ideas, but we will not use quotation marks because what we're using is our own words. Summarizing is to go through a large text and pull out just the main ideas. Put them into your own words and remember to cite the source. With paraphrasing, I want to make this very clear, paraphrasing is still written in your own words. You can't use some of the words of Oswalt and change some of the words to your own words and call that a paraphrase. That's not a paraphrase, that's plagiarism, because you're still using Angela Oswalt's words and you're probably still using her sentence structure. So a paraphrase must be written entirely in your own words. You still need to quote, you still need to cite that idea, those ideas came from Angela Oswalt, but you're writing a paraphrase in your own words. The difference between summarizing and paraphrasing is in the length. When you're going to summarize, you're going to take a large piece of text and you're going to shrink it down into a summary of just the main ideas in your own words. When you're paraphrasing, I want you to think about it this way. Think of paraphrasing as parallel phrasing. You're going to be using your own words, but you're going to follow the source. In this case, Angela Oswalt. You're going to follow her ideas, one idea after another, but you're going to put them in your own words. So a paraphrase is a parallel phrasing using your own words to communicate the ideas in the order that they're being taken from the source. In this case, Angela Oswalt. we still need to cite Angela Oswald, because even though we're using our own words for the paraphrase, we're following the logic of her text. We're still using Angela Oswald's text and the flow up and progression of her ideas. So it's a parallel text, and therefore a paraphrase can be as long or even longer than the text material that you're working with. All right? We've talked about effective note-taking, that effective note-taking takes place before research begins to prepare yourself to deal with the source materials with integrity and respect. We've talked about quoting, summarizing, and paraphrasing. Thank you.